Howdy, folks. Welcome back to Viva La Cats. I am Justin Hiles, your host, as well as my friend Steve Maurer. Join me on the other side of the screen. We cover the Cincinnati Bearcats every single week during the regular season and off season. We're all over the place, but we're here today. We are part of the 1012 network, so if you're not already aware of them, please go check out the 1012 network, which hosts a group of podcasts covering the Big 12, and as well check out our sponsors, Charlie Hustle, for some great vintage gear. We will get into that a little bit later. To start us off, we've had a few weeks off, and there hasn't been a ton happening that hasn't been baseball or one really big announcement, and that was the transfer of Dillon Mitchell from Texas to Cincinnati. Decided to stay within the Big 12 because the SEC sucks, and he knows the competition is better, and he knows Wes Miller is better. So he decided to stay in the Big 12. So welcome to Cincinnati, Dillon Mitchell. Very excited. It's a power forward transfer, averaging 9.6 points per game, 7.5 rebounds per game. Really stud player. I do believe, trying to remember if he was actually in or out during that game against Cincinnati earlier this past season. But regardless, it'll be great to have him on. Steve, what are your thoughts on that transfer?
I think it just makes us really long and really strong on the defensive end. Now, look, I mean, we love John Newman on this show, right? And I have all the respect and praise in the world for John Newman, and I'm not going to trash him. I really thank him for what he did as a Bearcat, but he doesn't have a 6'8" wingspan, and he's not like he's not 6'8", and he's unfortunately not a sophomore, because I would love 3 more years of John Newman. But man, this is just such a big win for UC out of the transfer portal. There was talk with the guy that ended up going to Ohio State, Sean Stewart, that he might come here. He and Jizzle have a previous relationship. Don't want to keep that door closed. Could come here. You never know. But I think it just makes an already strong defensive team even stronger. You've just got more length. Yep. Can play that Minnesota Timberwolves defense and just crowd lock everybody in and make sure that they're all boxed in. But I really like what Wes is pointing towards in the transfer portal, and I really think he hit on all 3 guys that he pulled in from the transfer portal. But this is a big time hit. There were some other names that were floating around that would have been nice to get, but not fully like exactly what we wanted. This is exactly what we wanted. And I talked about this on our last show, Justin, but this is a guy who clearly wanted to stay in the Big 12 and stay within the confines of the best basketball conference to improve his game and continuously keep upping it. So I think Cincinnati fans have to be really excited about our state in life, where a guy is about to go to the SEC and with Texas and is like, no, I want to stay in the Big 12. I want to go to Cincinnati. So, he was already getting shit from that Xavier guy, Quincy Oliveri, like, welcome to Cincinnati. I guess there's a relationship there with those two in the past. So, we'll give each other our shit. But, like, it is, like, cool to see just them already, like, getting into that rivalry. And Dillon Mitchell was already saying, like, ain't no way, boy, like this, so he was already getting into it. But, I mean, like, even if he does not produce, like, I want to read this tweet from our guy, Eric Lilly. He's running the Bearcat Bunch Twitter account right now. He was tweeting on Monday. I was excited, but he said, I'm thinking about the defensive potential / physicality / length / athleticism of a Day Thomas, insert shooting guard, Dan Skillings, Dillon Mitchell, and Aziz Bandaogo lineup. And I was like, that was pretty nice. Another tweet in the thread. And trying to think of the perfect offensive lineup that balanced shot making and offensive rebounding. Is it Jizzle James, Connor Hickman, Simas Lukosius, Dan Skillings, Aziz Bandaogo? And finally, he had one more. One of the best offensive rebounding lineups in the country. Jizzle James, insert shooting guard. They would all be not very great rebounders. Dan Skillings, Aziz Bandaogo. But brings up some great points there. There is a lot of opportunity for the Bearcats to mix and match some, like, really fun and different lineups there. And like I said, be really strong on that defensive side of the ball. So really happy with what Wes did in the transfer portal. And I think it's just another one of those guys that keeps upping the profile of Cincinnati. And like, I know you shouldn't really look at a program as its players. You should look at, the coach. But right now, it is a player-driven sport. And the players that are on your roster kind of like we can kind of assess how you're going to be just by the guys you have. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? Like we knew who the guys were, but in this transfer portal era where you're able to pick guys back and forth and like drop them into your team, I really think that this is just it's about who you get. It's not just about the quantity. It's more about like the quality of players you get. And getting Dillon Mitchell and Arrington Page in the same transfer portal window, to me, that's an A+. Like that's a 10 in the recruiting and Connor Hickman too. Like not to leave him out, but like I just really like everything that Wes is doing right now. And with the news today as we record that CJ Frederick is going to come back and play another year, says he's fully healthy, says he wants to give it one more run. That's just another guy that the Bearcats can bring off the bench and hit a couple threes late in the game. And you also, Justin, don't have to rely on Betsy, McKinley, or Ravon to give you anything. Like you can just give them another full year for development and let them work with and let them practice with those guys that are on your roster. So, Justin, I want to ask you, is this hype? Like I've seen a lot of different hype for other teams where everybody in the comments is like, no way, dude. Like they're overhyped. Like I think Xavier is getting a lot of this right now. And all the UC fans are like, how is that possible? No chance.
Mm-hmm.
Are other fan bases saying this about UC? Like, are they saying like, oh, no way. Like they're not going to be that good. It's all going to fall apart. Like, what do you think the other teams are saying about the additions that we've made?
That's a good question. I mean, I feel like it's kind of all over the board from what I've seen, but I'll give it this. I think the difference is when you look at past years, it was, we might add a guy here or there that might make an impact, but realistically, we're hoping that he is the guy coming out of the portal. We're hoping that this is the guy who's going to flip some things around. Now it's shit, man. We have a starting 5. Is this guy going to be able to start? And how good is he going to be able to be? Is he going to be able to like bolster this roster? Is he going to be able to provide enough competition? Because I think we are at a high enough competitive level now, and the guys are good enough that it's not a age factor anymore, where you might have a guy who might have some seniority and might get a little bit more leeway to stay in the lineups a little bit longer, the starting lineups, because maybe he's a senior. Now we've got, coming out, say a player like Jizzle, who's a freshman who started at towards the end of the season, or like Dan, who worked his way into a starting position. You've got guys like that who are young, who have some eligibility left and have won those spots clear and away. So you've got to ask yourself when you're in the portal, is this guy going to give them enough competition? And if not, are we just getting a bench player? And I really think that West did a fantastic job of getting guys who can be that guy, but not really having to worry about whether or not, like, if this transfer doesn't work out, our season falls apart. Where I feel like that was a little bit of the past where like we had to have these transfers work. Now I think these guys are really just going to be additions. And if they are impact players, if they are coming out swinging and they're winning that starting role, that's just that much better. But I feel really confident about our core and the nucleus that we've kept through this past season, through the offseason. You kept some really core players between Day, between Jizzle, Dan, CMOS. Like you've got some really important key guys in your lineup that you don't really have to worry about the portal too much. Now it's really, how does the portal help me instead of, how can this save my program, essentially? I think we're in a much different light at this point in age. And
here's the other thing too, Justin. There's no more players on this roster with the loss of Victor Locken to Clemson in the transfer portal. There's no more players that were on this roster with John Brand. Everyone is gone now.
Clean slate. No excuses.
Yes. Well, there is that for sure. But I think when you look at it and the amount of how the talent has grown over the past 3 years, I like the talent acquisition part. If I roll together both the recruiting and the transfer portal, like I think I have to reconsider my grade, honestly, Justin, from what he's been doing. And like, I think, I don't think any of the grades that people gave and that we gave were unfair when we did that assessment. I think it's fair to say like they were falling apart late in games. Maybe some of the player acquisition wasn't at the top level, or like, and that's people complaining that like we didn't get like the top transfers or we didn't get like, the top guys. We got the next guys. But look who we just got in a transfer portal. We basically got one of those guys that we were already recruiting like beforehand and then brought him in this cycle, and then got another former 5-star guy in this cycle as well. Like this is just the only thing that like to me now for West to put it all together is for him to just go out and win. Like just go out and really just bring this one home. Like, your goals are obvious. I think it's fair to say now that this is a tournament team. They're getting some love in the preseason top 25. And like different people's, not like in any official preseason top 25. I think that's fine. I think that's kind of like a they added all the players and they're in the Big 12. So that's kind of how the math equation works there. Right. I don't know if they're a full-fledged top 25 team because I haven't seen them play a full game yet. But it's pretty exciting to see what the potential is of this group together. And I think that it's a team that West can really build on from the defensive side of the ball. And on offense, I think that, you're just building confidence in Jizzle James, in Dan Skillings, by adding shooters around them in Seamus, Hickman, and Frederick, and post threats like Mitchell, Bandago, Page. Like you're just giving your two primary scorers, like you're taking some of the weight off of their shoulders by bringing these guys in. And hopefully you're finding them more open looks. So I know not everybody's I take that back. Justin, have you seen anything negative about like the job that Wes is doing right now? Because like I feel like it's all been positive.
No, it's all positives. And I think the biggest thing, coming back to kind of what you were just saying, is Wes has done a very good job of kind of building it in the same way that you look at the NBA. Granted, heights is a whole different factor because if you look at our front court, back court, it ranges. And you're not always going to have NBA height players. But what I'll say is he's building it in a very similar way where you have the positionless basketball, where you have guys who can match up at the 2, 3, or 4. You have a 3 that can do the 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or even stretch maybe out to a 5 if you have to. Guys that can guard everybody, defense that can play against anybody, offense that can play anybody. If a guy's shorter, he can find a shot against a center. If he's shorter, he can find his shot against a point guard. Like Wes's ability to find the guys who can he's filled the gaps very well. And that I think is the really big takeaway just from the transfer portal and his job. And one thing that I want to say too, I was actually curious. So I looked at this. I want you to take a guess. For the overall rank from 247 in 2021, what do you think that was for the Bearcats when it comes to basketball commits?
I think I saw this. I think it was in like the 40s.
No.
Sorry. No. Oh, okay.
We're
cut that in half.
No, we're off. We are way off. 151.
Oh, I'm sorry. What year was this again?
2021.
Okay. Yeah. 151. Yeah. Sorry.
2021, 151. 2022, up to 42.
Okay. Yeah.
2023, 24. And then 2024, we're at 20th. So he made leaps and bounds, like so much progress based off of where we were. And I'll say this too. 2021 was kind of a weird year. If you go back, even this is no credit to Brandon because we don't give Brandon credit, but he's sitting at 48, and that's in the American. And if you go back to 2019, 43. So we were hovering for a while, but the difference is now, even though you're in the Big 12, even though you got Jordan, you got all this, Wes has done a very good job of getting the talent. And I think part of that comes back to the NIL as well. But he's done a very good job of getting the talent in the door. Like you said, now it just has to come down to converting it into success on the floor. You can get all the talent in that you want, but if you don't do anything with it, then, I don't know what to tell you. Like you have to have something to show for after all the time you've spent on recruiting. And so I think based on last year's success, West did a fantastic job. I think there's going to be some teams that are going to be returning some veteran talent. I'm a little worried about a Kansas or a Houston or the Iowa States of the world. So the guys who played really well this past year, Baylor too. Like, I think there's going to be some really strong teams, but I feel very strong about our ability to really crack into that top 7 this year. I still don't think we're going to be cracking into the top 5. If we do, hallelujah, Cincinnati is going to be on fire. But I think if we can just crack into that top half and we can stay there in that top half, we did it a few times last season. We started off hot. We just need to be able to ride it out. And I think the biggest thing for me, for Wes, is now that you've filled all these gaps, now that you've got some great recruits in the door, you've got some good transfer portal additions after last year, you have a year of the Big 12 under your belt, you have all of these things figured out. Once you hit mid-February, early February, does your season get better or does it start to go downhill? Because West did a solid job. Non-conference, you lost the 2 important games, but solid job through non-conference. Through the beginning of conference play, fantastic job. Front half of conference play, fantastic job. And then you won where you absolutely had to, and you still lost a few that you had no business losing towards the end of the season. That's where I think if West can really just clean up those games where it's less of, oh, let's see what we can win this year. And it's, I know that we should beat this team, and there is no excuse for losing to this team. If you win those games, Big 12 or not, if you win those games where there is no excuse to lose that game because your talent is clearly better, your team is clearly better, I think this team has no issue going into the NCAA tournament. I think they have no issue staying ranked throughout the year. I think they're going to start probably in the top 35 minimum at the beginning of the year. And I think it would only take a few weeks of non-conference for them to get up into the top 25. And by the time you play X, by the time you have crosstown shootout, right at your doorstep, I think this team really starts to make some strides. And if you win that game, you start off decent in non-conference or in conference play, I think you're just checking a few boxes towards the end of the season and making sure you get the wins on the board. I think the pieces are really here in a way that they haven't been since probably 2018, 2019, since 2017, 2018. All the talent is there. And I forget who brought this up, and I'll ask you this as our last point or on this. I do have one other thing that I want to mention, but as our last few points on this, when was the last team that was like that the Cincinnati Bearcats had on a basketball court that was this talented? Because I think it's a 2017, 2018 team. But here's my question. Would you go as far as to say that there is on paper more talent here? No discredit to those guys, but do you think there's more talent across the full roster right now? I think those front leaders were still ballers, no doubt in my mind. No knock on any of them, but do you think that this roster, end to end, starting lineup, bench, third rotation guys, redshirting guys, do you think that this full roster is better than even maybe that roster was so many years ago now?
Yeah, maybe not the front court. I would definitely take the Kyle and Gary front court over our current front court. No offense to them. Mm-hmm. I love them. You're wearing red and black, so you're welcome with me anytime. But the backcourt, I could see it. I think it's nothing. Like you said, it's not a knock on those guys from that team. It's more that these guys on this roster are Big 12 players, and they're Big 12 talented. And I think that there's a difference, and we had commiserated for years over how a certain former head coach used to recruit here and how Wes Miller is recruiting right now. So, obviously there's the thing about recruiting to a system or recruiting to, to just talent. We're just recruiting talent to your system. And right. Wes is kind of taking that talent route, right? So I do think that just on pure talent, that this current team is pretty dang good. I do think that they have an opportunity to really show what they can do. And they play a much harder schedule too. So that American schedule that year was probably one of the better years of the AAC because you got 3 teams in pretty comfortably in Houston, Wichita, and us that year. That was pretty good for a non-Louisville AAC. So like I do like the take. And I remember who you're talking about now. It was Doug at DE Smith. We've used some of his tweets before, but he did mention that like top to bottom most talented roster he's seen in his lifetime. And he was older than 5 when the 2001 Bearcats were around, so
right.
he would have probably more of an opinion on it. And I think he's not wrong, because just because of that Big 12 schedule, like I said, because of just the wars these guys have fought. Like last year, the experience all the guys got, including Dillon Mitchell, in the Big 12. Like that's way like I feel like the person I hated about 5 years ago, talking about how much better power conference ball is than like lower conference ball. But once you're in it, once you see it, you're like, okay, this is like legit different. And I don't think I was ever saying that about like the Big 12. I was probably more saying that about like, Xavier, the Big East or whatever. And that is also a good league. I don't want to shade them, but it is just like completely different once you see it. And by the way, speaking of the Big 12 real quick, Justin, 20 league games this upcoming season for basketball, starting December 30th and 31st. So a week earlier than last year. No like early December weekend for conference games. We're just going to keep them all in the back half of the season, which I don't mind. I kind of like. But that only leaves 11 non-con games. And you've got 4 already with Dayton, Villanova in the Big 12 Big East Challenge, that team across town, and then I'm talking about NKU and that Blue School. So you got 4 already there. So that's you're just gonna fill 7 more cupcakes on there, but that's 24.
Well, now you get to go into the new year pissed off or really happy.
Yep. I mean, unfortunately, I feel like I'm going to be pissed off, but
we're going to be no, not yet.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. We can't wave the white flag in fucking March. May. Yeah. I'm sorry, whatever it is. Yeah, you're right. But
I will say, I mean, I do think that is going to be nice, and it's again comes back to the Pac-12, RIP, rest in peace, Bozo, and all the other people who ACC who like to say, ooh, they're juicing their conference and all this other stuff. Well, guess what? Now we're going to juice it even more by playing some more conference games. So up yours, whoever your freaking name is from Pitt. You're so unmemorable. What is it, Jeff Capel or something?
Yep. Yeah. Because he capped.
He's yours. Capped. Yeah. Sorry. Got screwed over in the tournament because you have a shitty schedule. Yeah, cap, bro. With that said, the last thing, I'm going to read this off really fast, and then we're going to jump to baseball because we've been talking about basketball a lot, and it's May. So, last thing. I just threw up a tweet last week, and I actually just wanted to run this off because I think this is really interesting when you look at the chronological rank of these players that we've pulled in. So, for what Wes Miller has recruited and what he's done in the portal, here's some numbers for you. Tyler Betsy, 46th in the nation. Again, this is recruits. Rayvon Griffith, 64th. McKinley, 78th. Jizzle James, 80. Dan Skillings, 105. And Josh Reed, 205. That's what he's recruited. And also you can see chronologically through time, that's also gotten better. For the portal, we'll go reverse order of how I have this ranked. Day didn't have a ranking because of JUCO, but we all know he was good. I think he would have been solid right around a 90 ranking. CJ Frederick, 89 ranking for the transfer portal. Arlington Page, 90 rating for the transfer portal as well, and 57th in high school coming out of there. And damn it, I feel like I almost put him on the recruited side. He recruited him last year, and I think he was this close, and USC decided to drop a bag and then just screw over their whole program. So, recruited portal. Works out for there. Seamus Lukosius, 90 rating. Hickman, 91 rating. Ben Dago, a 94 rating in the transfer portal. And Dillon Mitchell to round us out with a 96 rating in the transfer portal, which is huge. And also, coming out of high school, 8th ranked player nationally by 247. That's huge. That's huge. That talent does not just dissipate. And I think, like we said before, it really goes to show Texas and all these other really big programs with a lot of money in athletics, I think, can really afford to get some of these players. Now it feels nice that, if you look at a player like that, he's no slouch. I think if he was going to the SEC, he's not battling for his position. He's going to be starting when he plays in the SEC with Texas. So the fact that he stayed in the Big 12 and the fact that he went to Cincinnati, I think says a lot. And I really do think it is going to be interesting to see how everything works out with him getting into the starting lineup this year. And if that's a clear and away thing or if there's competition. But regardless, Wes done a fantastic job by the numbers, by the sheets. Just got to see if he puts it all together. Steve, we have talked a billion words on basketball. It is time for the relevant thing that is happening as we speak. Bearcats postseason baseball. I almost said basketball. Can't get it out of my mind.
Basketball
postseason
school.
Baseball, ball and stick sport. Steve, catch us up.
Yeah. So seventh inning just ended, and UC still has a 4-3 lead over the University of Texas Longhorns. Where took a 2-0 lead. Horns down. Took a 2-0 lead early in the game, gave up 3 runs in the bottom of the 4th, scored 2 in the top of the 6th to take that 4-3 lead. So by the end of the show, hopefully we'll know whether or not the Cats are moving on or unfortunately out of the tournament. So, but I did want to sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, let's not forget that if you do beat Texas in the Big 12 tournament, you are also beating Texas in the Big 12 tournament in their last Big 12 tournament in Arlington. So it's just a full-on horns down moment. That's great.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I was pretty happy for shout out to our Texas Tech bros, tailgate talks, and then tortillas and takes. Both of those shows, I'm happy for you because Texas Tech got to beat Texas in a sport one last time. So in conference at least. So I am happy for them. So yes, Justin, I believe on our last episode, we were previewing the upcoming week ahead for baseball. That was the UConn and Oklahoma games. And we had just covered how UC had won. I'm sorry, when was our last show, Justin?
May 7th.
May 7th. Okay. So we had not yet seen the Bearcats win their 4th straight conference series in baseball, which I don't think it's happened since like the George W. Bush administration. There was no data. Like we don't have any data on when it happened. It's just that I didn't see a tweet of when the last time that happened was. 4 straight conference. Yes. So because the previous tweet was from our buddy Jeff Gentle or Jeff Howe, one of those two Jeffs that likes baseball. They said that it was the first time that UC had won 3 straight conference series in baseball since 2016, and that's a good 8-year span there. So you can imagine, winning 4 straight, like it's a big accomplishment. Even just making it to this tournament that I'm watching right now, in the background, I'm still talking. Don't worry, it's on mute. But as I'm following along with, I should say, only the top 10 teams make it. It's not like the basketball tournament where everybody makes it. Only the top 10 make it. So this year, UC was projected to finish last by the Big 12 official.
Dead last,
13th. And Jordan Bishel got them all the way up to 5th this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's very impressive. And, unfortunately, they were not able to play their game against Connecticut, a midweek game that could have helped their RPI, and they lost 2 out of 3 against Oklahoma. Pretty impressive win in that Friday night series finale against Oklahoma. Scored 10 unanswered runs, and senior Josh Hagman hit his first career home run, which happened to be a grand slam that gave them the 4 winning runs. That was quite impressive, I will say. So, but yeah, Justin, just to even talk about the Bearcats having an at-large bid in baseball, or the possibility of it. We were talking about it on my other podcast, Shocking White Male 2 podcast. On our Reds podcast, we did a bit about how we were talking about Cincinnati baseball, and then we ended up talking about the Bearcats for a good 15 minutes to start that show. And I mentioned that it's just a feat in itself to make the conference tournament, even when you're projected to finish 13th. But we were mentioning that we don't know if UC has ever made the NCAA baseball tournament as an at-large bid, because there's not really great records kept on like if teams won conference championships or if they were just simply invited to play back in the 50s. But let's just say this: the last two times UC made the tournament, 1974 and 2019, those were both the automatic bid. So it's either been a while or it's never happened. So like just talking about that after, they were fine the last couple of years, but obviously like they kind of had the scandal last year with the gambling and everything, and entering like a really good baseball league, you'd think that we've made some jokes this year, Justin, and for the listeners about the program's motto of being day one ready in the Big 12. And if I had bet $1 million on any sport to be the best, I would not have bet on baseball, to be honest.
Yeah, no
because they had the gambling. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, seriously though, Justin, I am so impressed with what this team's done this year. I've come to know their names. I'm really excited to see what happens next year. I mean, I think we've always wanted a third sport that people are really like living and dying with for this university. And like, if the baseball program continues to elevate the way they are, I don't see why not. I don't see why it can't be the baseball program. Obviously, all love to, like the lacrosse program, volleyball, soccer, like, you all have the ability to garner our love and support. And we not to say that we don't love and support the teams, but I'm just thinking just as like the casual fan, who like is not really following any other sports outside of football and basketball. Maybe UC baseball will start to enter the lexicon if they continue to build on this year's momentum.
Right. Well, and that's, I think, a huge thing. And hopefully that is the case. I mean, like you said, we've been trying to find that extra sport that just feels like, and this is a good timing sport too, because baseball carries into the spring. So I think it's one of those things where people have been watching. I've noticed that there's more conversation about it, more than there's probably ever has been. And I think they're hitting their stride at the right time. They just have to be consistent. And I think, like you said, that goes for any sport. The best thing about this for baseball is if it really can, you don't have football or basketball lapsing over these sports that really, once they're on their own, can get some shine and get some attention. I think that's a lot of what's happening now, but they have the success to prove it and they have the success to follow it up. So I think one of the biggest things for me is if we can really hone in on, like we've said for our podcast, if we can really hone in on trying to cover these guys more, I think it will really help, some of the other podcasts too for Cincinnati. If you're not already, try to cover them more, like try to cover some more of these sports. That's the thing that we've been working on for a while in general, is trying to cover more sports. We try to do it with our Bearcats sports wrap up when we do that. But just try to give some more love and attention to some of these other sports, because ultimately the more fans that show up, the more people that interact with their accounts, the more people that are watching this, it only helps the program get better. It's so easy to watch football and basketball and turn your brain off after those seasons are done. I am guilty of it too. Steve has been doing a fantastic job of keeping me up to date on baseball, because I've had busy stuff going on at work, and I've just tried to shut my brain off, because you, especially when we're podcasting all the time, like throughout the season, you kind of want to take some time off. You kind of want to let your brain rest, because it is a constant grind of information. But I think baseball really does have that opportunity. I'm excited to see how they perform. Hopefully, if they finish out tonight, we get to watch some more baseball, and we get to maybe watch them go a little bit further. We'll see what happens. But speaking of other sports, football, not another sport, one of the main sports. No offense. Football, which most people, their brains perk up when they hear it, and most other people's brains shut off. Our brains perk up because we have 100 days from release date, which is Thursday, the 23rd of May, 100 days until the football season starts. Steve, we have some questions regarding the famed number 100. I don't know if Steve's going to be launching his 100-day countdown again. I don't know. I don't know if you're planning on doing that this year, but
we'll see. Yes. How about that?
That's a lot of work and consistency. What we will say is that we do have these questions. So, Steve, I'm going to start off with this. Will we score 100 points in our non-conference schedule? And please do refresh us on what our non-conference games are.
So we will be starting with that Saturday, August 31st game against Towson. We'll be going up to dreaded Oxford, Miami, to play Miami, and we will be hosting the Pitt Panthers in the River City rivalry. So, Justin, you scored 28, 24, and 66 in your first 3 games last year.
That's an analyst brain right there, guys. I am envious.
They don't pay me pretty like I'm well taken care of. Okay. Bearcats 3-run home run, 7-3 right now. So big bomb. Big
horns
bomb.
Down.
Horns down. Anyway.
Horns down. Enjoy the SEC, bitch. Anyways, sorry.
So I would say that if you can score 66 again in your FCS game, gives you a good 2 solid games to score 22 points in each. And I'll just say this, man. Like, I know Pitt is good, so maybe that'll only take 21, but this team should try to score 21 in each game. Try to score. Yeah. Like, if we want to do bowl by boulder and you got to win 6 games, I'm going to say they have to score 3 touchdowns and in each of those games that they need to win. So yeah, I'll say it. Like, give them 100.
Yeah, I'd say for me, personally, as much as I would love to be optimistic about that, I think I would take the under on that. Only because if you do the math, that is an average of just about 33 points a game, which means that if you have to average 33 points a game based on what we saw last season, and then you're still having to get all these new guys up to speed, I think it might take a little bit to get us on track. I'm hoping we come out the door swinging, but hopefully we don't blow our full load in the first game like we did last year. Well, not the first game. No, it was the first game. Hopefully we don't blow our full load in the first game like we did last year and then just coast off of that win, the FCS win for the rest of the year. I'm still going to take the under. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm hopeful. I'd love to see it happen. Next up, how many games will Corey Kiner reach 100 yards? Or let's just open this up even to running backs in general. An individual running back for the Bearcats having 100 yards on the board.
I really liked what Scott Satterfield did with the run game last year. And I also really like that all 5 starting linemen are returning this year, especially Luke Kandra, and that Corey Kiner is coming back as well. So I am going to say that they reach that 100-yard mark in 8 games this year.
8. Okay.
8.
Fair enough. I was going to say 7, so we're right around the same spot.
Because, like, I think it's, they talked about there was a couple games last year where they had 200 yards passing, 200 yards rushing, and I think that happened in 5 games last year. So that's already a lot of rushing yards just in general. And I really like that the offensive line has stayed intact. So I feel great about their chances to hit 100 in 2/3 of their games, especially like we said, if you're doing that early on in the season. And I feel like if you're able to run the ball early, once it gets cold later in the season, and then obviously in your trips, it's going to be cold in Cincinnati, and then your trips to Ames and Kansas State is going to be cold. Running the ball early and having success running the ball early is only going to help you as you go down the season. So
absolutely.
I don't want to set up, you got to hit 100 in all 12 games, but I feel like 8 is realistic.
Yeah, no, and I think that makes a lot of sense. All right, next up, will we have any games with less than 100 rushing yards this season as a team? Hopefully not. I would hope to God that combined between our entire running back room and everything that Scott Satterfield's magician offensive mind brain can throw out there, that we do not end up with a single game where we come up short with less than 100 yards. But Steve, will we have any games with less than 100 yards rushing?
I will say no as well. The only ones, like I said, that stand out to me will be the Kansas State and Iowa State games late in the season, cold nights. But again, 5 offensive linemen returning and a solid running back room. I feel great about our chances to reach 100 yards in each game. So I'm going to say they will not have a game in which they don't score. Don't rush for 100 total.
I know there's going to be one game that pisses us off this year, and I don't know who it's going to be. Iowa State has great defense, although we did just steal their defensive coordinator, so I would feel a little bit better about that. However, I still do think that there probably will be one game where we come up short there, and maybe it's just because we're hitting the ground running with our offensive game through the air. So I'm going to say the opposite. I'm going to say there's going to be at least one, which means that it would be, I guess, the under in this situation. All right, 2 more. Will we return a kick of 100 or more yards this season? It's been a while since we've had a kickoff return that cranked out some numbers like that. But what do you think, Steve?
So I believe our last one was the ECU game in 2022. And before that, it was the Trey Tucker of 2021 that I was able to see with my own eyes. One of my favorite plays I've ever seen live. I will say no, just because while the kickoff rule is changing for the NFL, it is not changing for college football. And the amount of times that you're going to just take the touchback and try to just keep working and just not try to get pinned down within your own 10-yard line. Right. I will say they will not. I would like to see it happen. I don't even know who our kick returner might be this year. So hopefully it's not the same guy it was last year. I don't. Yeah. So I have a feeling that we will not score a kick return touchdown this year, but they'll just spite us and catch it on the 3 and run it back for a 97-yarder or something.
Oh, for sure. I would agree. I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. That would be electric, though, and we will be the first to call that out if it does happen. All right. And the final question. This one is not just pertaining to this season. It does include this season. Scott Satterfield sits at a grand total of, I believe you said, 79 wins as a head coach in his career. Will Scott Satterfield win 100 games total over his career while coaching for the Bearcats? So that would entail at least, at the bare minimum, another this season and another one after that if he's just stomping teams. But in the likely odds that probably does not happen that consistently because it is the Big 12. Although there is room for postseason wins, a little bit more room now. I'm going to say yes. But it's probably going to take a while. It's probably going to take 3 seasons.
Yeah. But to me, and why I like that question is it just brings up the debate of what is the point where we pull the plug? Obviously, and I listened to the Cover 3 podcast, Justin, a great national college football podcast. And, Bud Elliott, I kind of expected him. They just did CBS Sports as a whole, just released their Power 4 coach rankings. And Field was in the 50s. And I was, he was one of the bottom 15 coaches and above Dion, by the way. I was expecting Satterfield to get roasted by the podcast, just because of how poorly he did last year, how they go 3-9. And he was on their Coaches Under Pressure segment. They had one earlier in this week. So, obviously the note is there, but I like listening to Bud Elliott. He's a lawyer. I feel like he at least has a sense of what he's talking about. And he's big on the recruiting trail. So he mentioned that if you look at the class that Cincinnati brought in, Fickell's last 2 classes, there did not be a lot of guys there that turned out to really be producers here at UC. And, just the amount of turnover that has happened over the past 2 years with our roster, you can see that. So that leads me to believe, Justin, that it wasn't really all on Satterfield. I really just think that if you've got recruiting analysts saying that it was really just the roster was not up to par with the rest of the league. And I do think that the roster has gotten better and will take some time to get better. But, I think it's that classic 3-year window, right? You're not going to I don't think we're going to fire him if we go 3-9 again this year, just because he's got a lot of money coming towards him. Right. So, he's got a big buyout. So, and we signed him for a 6-year contract. You don't want to be the school that is firing people 2 years in. A&M. Yes. Yeah. I don't think you need to give him an extension right now, of course, but I don't think you need to be firing these guys 2 years in. And I think the buyout is a good thing to prohibit UC from making a mistake and being on the hook And I think that's a great thing about UC is that other than Brandon, we have not really been on the hook for a coach in a long time. Like we have not had to fire a guy like in a really long time. And I think that's great. Like I don't, if you look at like some of those things that ESPN puts out, like some schools are still owing like coaches from like 10 years ago, and they have like over $50 million, even $100 million in buyouts. And UC does not have that problem, which is great. We've gotten really lucky. And for Brandon, I think we ended up settling. You know, it was like $3 million. Like, all right, get out of here, start your own painting company. But so just to sum this up, Justin, long-winded answer, I think he will reach it. And that is because I feel like they're not going to pull the plug on him if, you know, in this sense, say he wins 6 this year, wins 8 next year, wins 9 the year after that. That gets you to 21. That's 23. That would be 100 wins in his career. That would get you there. I think that I like what I see from him. The offense has an ability to get there. I feel like the defense can be better this year with the new DC, with the guys they brought in, and with the offensive players they brought in. I do think it's just building that talent level up to a Big 12 level that we will be able to be more competitive. So I agree. I thought at the start of this rant I was going to say no, just because, like, you know, it is kind of like what he's done. What have you done for me lately? You just went 3-9 last year, but I don't think that was all on him. I think it was kind of on Fickell a little bit for what he left in the cupboard here. Cupboard wasn't exactly full. And we saw some different things that last year that I liked from Satterfield. So I say yes to.
And I agree. I would just say, you know, for a little bit more detail on my side, I mean, I think the point that you make about, you know, Fickell's situation out the door, it's very easy to put a lot of the blame on the new guy. And, you know, I'm still very much a proponent of keeping Satterfield accountable and making sure that he's actually doing the job that he was brought here to do, and understanding that the program has been at a high point and it should be respected and shown that way by also having wins to prove that. However, I think there was a lot of stuff on Satterfield's plate last year to try to turn over in a fresh year when you're completely revamping the staff end to end, you're revamping the roster end to end, and you're going into a new conference that he doesn't have a familiarity playing in. He also has a lot of players who don't have familiarity playing in those Power 5 conferences. It's a lot to ask. I mean, you get guys that will be able to grade up, but I think he had a really tall task last year. But that's where I come back to for this year is I'm very hopeful that everything works out. But this is his like proving ground here. And I don't think, like you said, that we're going to be the team that does the buyout thing. But he's got to be bowl eligible, or people are going to be calling for his head. They already were last year. But this year, after getting that year under your belt, getting some more recruits in the door, getting your system figured out, being able to handpick more of your guys, this is a time where you got to get bowl eligible fast, or you're going to have some problems. But it doesn't matter, because we're going to hashtag bowl by Boulder, and we're going to be fine. And we're not going to be paying no buyouts. We're not going to be the school that pays buyouts. Hopefully, you know, we're entering an era where we might be paying some players some buyouts. If any of you are following the Jaden Rashada thing with Florida,
or the House versus NCAA thing too.
Yes, that's going to be really interesting. I think we should save that for another week, because that actually is a very interesting topic to cover right now, because that's a lot of floating money.
That's a summer pod. Yep.
That's a lot of money we're talking about. But that covers our 100-day segment. You know what else happens in 100 days? The football season starts, and I'm hoping that maybe we end up with some Bearcats football merch from our friends at Charlie Hustle. We'll see. I don't know what's in the works. We'll have to ask. We'll find out. But Charlie Hustle, vintage made fresh. These guys got you covered for everything when it comes to Big 12 apparel, as well as other collegiate teams. They're constantly growing. They provide some very quality threads. Everything is super comfortable, feels great, fits great. And I think there's so many options for you for this summer. And I really encourage you, if you're going to be looking for something more for the Bearcats, to check out their website, because they have some great gear. And I got a few things for you here. We've been talking baseball. Guess what? They added this beauty recently. If you'll see to the right of the screen, Bearcats baseball tee. Love these cuts. These things are super comfortable, and it's awesome to see something that actually has the red outline on it, on that white with the black in there. I think it's a really cool pop. Be a nice, pretty wearable addition to your closet. And it's nice to see all three colors represented there in a very nice Bearcats tee. So make sure to check that out. I believe that's about $42 on their website right now. You can use our promo code 101215 for 15% off of all non-sale items, and you can check out with this bad boy. Got two more for you. Right here, got the block Cincinnati Jam style font with the swoosh. This one is currently marked off. I believe it's down to $25 now. So if you go to the website, you can find this one for $25. Quick, easy checkout, get out the door, no problem. The last one, the Bring the Ruckus shirt. I know you've seen me wearing this. I know you saw Steve wearing the last one a few weeks ago. Both of these shirts, the one I just showed you here and this one, $25 right now, $10 off. Go to the website, www.charliehustle.com. Check out with these shirts, get you some gear, get ready for basketball season when it comes up in the fall, and just have more Bearcats gear. It's always fun. We like it. But if you're really feeling the baseball one right now and you're really feeling the baseball summary stuff, get this one because this one's hot. So that'll cover everything then from them. Again, use our promo code 101215 for 15% off of all non-sale items from Charlie Hustle. Remember, the tagline, vintage made fresh. Steve, there's somebody who is quite high on the Bearcats. We've already kind of talked about this, but we didn't mention his name. There's a guy who's very high on the Bearcats who has been a bit of a downer on the Bearcats for a while. He knows the reputation. He knows much more about this team than the average American. He is very well informed. That man is Jon Rothstein. And Jon Rothstein has been down on the Bearcats for quite some time. Steve, why is he so high on the Bearcats? I want to know.
Well, I think he's a Johnny come lately, and he's just just hopping on the bandwagon. No, Rothstein knows ball, and it is kind of funny to see, like, almost 3 years and a month later after the tweet of Cincinnati basketball is at an all-time low, which maybe at the time it was. It's just a funny thing to look back on now. I mean, like, they had just fired the coach, for like, doing whatever he did, being weird. But like, it is pretty cool to see what Wes Miller has done in that time and really built this thing back up to where it is. Like, we were talking, Justin, now about a potentially top 25 two sports with BAS at the start. Top 25 basketball team. Like, it's pretty impressive to see what he's done. And there was someone who replied to us and said, there's a lot of people that, wanted to see Wes go, but look at what he's done in this short time. And I think it's another same thing as, what we were just talking about with Satterfield, where, the program was kind of in the dumps a little bit. Not even kind of, it was in the dumps when Wes got it. And he's been able to build it back up. We're working our way back to the NCAA, but it's at a point now where people are excited again. There's not really like apathy around this team. There's a lot of people that were really excited to see what they did in the Big 12 this year. There's people that were pulling down the stretch for us to win the Big 12 tournament just for us to get in. Like, it kind of went in waves, but I think there's not really that apathy there anymore. I mean, like that 2021 year, that was the perfect year for people to go full in on football because they're like, all right, well, basketball's going to suck this year. And obviously football, brought us like a really happy moment that year. But traditionally, like, our fan base and our school has been more successful, has seen more success with basketball. So I do feel like there's like, just this tweet is like the cherry on top. And like, just that it's a video of him like with the sunglasses on is so perfect.
Yeah, no, and I don't know. I mean, it's nice because I think this is one of the things that I always subtly think about. And this is just a social media thing in general. I'm not going to get too deep in the weeds here, but when people are talking about your program as a fan, you're going to listen and you're going to pay attention. And ultimately, people want to hear positive things about their program. They don't want to hear that their program's in the shitter. But, when you have analysts, when you have people that are around the sport, when you have somebody who is like Jon Rothstein, who's constantly around the sport, it's nice to hear that people who understand the game very well feeling good about your team, and not only feeling good, but being high on that team, like having a lot of energy for that team. And it's nice because I think this is one of those things that I subconsciously, for fans in general, but subconsciously for college athletics in general, the more that your team is talked about and hyped up going in, it does set up a little bit more. It sets up a higher ceiling and a much lower floor. However, the more that your team is hyped up, it really allows you to stay in the conversation longer. And again, when we're still in a land where, as we have, all these metrics, we have all these statistics and all these numbers and computers and algorithms to solve all of these things to pick teams at the end of the year, reputation and what have you done for me lately? And what is the vibe around this team? Is this a team that we said is going to be a tournament team last year, and now they're a tournament team, or they're fringe? That gets you in, versus if you're some random team, like some G5 team that's magically did good and you have to try to create some buzz. If your team has buzz, I think it really does give you a lot of, I guess, more credibility towards the end of the season. So I'm always excited to hear about more of that from guys like Jon, from more of these analysts around the sport, basketball and football and all the other things as well. Speaking of, you kind of touched on the short-term gratification that Cincinnati fans love. For more short-term gratification and the long-term gratification that we probably all need, because it says satisfaction has been so missing for many of these things for so long. Pro sports in Cincy. Steve, we're going to make this quick, but we need a rundown. Like, what's going on right now?
So the Reds are the Reds. It seems like it was a one-year high, and then everything is just falling apart this year. So I don't really feel like talking much about them because they make me sad. The Bengals just released their schedule. They've got a really hard schedule this year. I kind of wonder if, I don't know. There's going to be some tough decisions that have to be made this year. They've got a really hard schedule. I feel like the pacing of it did them no favors either. So I'm interested, but I'm worried, to say the least. The one team I'm not worried about from a pro sports sense, Justin, are fighting blue and orange Garys. Like them boys are only in second in the Eastern Conference because the league has conspired to make Miami first by giving them just an extra game. And
by giving
close.
them FC Barcelona is what they're doing.
Yes. Transfer market news: Inter Miami loaned FC Barcelona.
Yeah,
like tribute team. So I'm pretty impressed with. Obviously, like, they lost a couple games at the early part of the year. People were wondering about them. If you want more in-depth talk, obviously go to our friends at the Postcast Cincy. But just for right now, Justin, I really like what we're seeing. You won a game in Columbus. Pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Second in the conference, basically on a technicality of you've played less games than the first place team, and you're going to be playing less games than them for a little bit. I just like everything I've seen from them. I feel like the offense is finally starting to come together. Lucho is playing like an MVP again. So I was
going to hit on that. That's one thing I wanted to mention. Like, I saw somebody bring this up on Twitter. One of these days, I'm going to actually write these things down when I have these thoughts or read these things on Twitter. But like, Lucho's playing quite possibly better than he was last year.
Yeah.
And he was the MVP last year. Like, that's crazy to say that, like, he's playing even better. So I am really curious if he's got that potential to do that. Of course, you've got Messi, you have some of these other players that are still going to get a lot of the hype and attention and very easily do that. I mean, I think Messi scored like 6 goals in a game. I don't remember when that happened.
Yeah, he's probably going to run away with it. Yeah. But it is like, real people know ball,
right.
Of non-Messi players, I think Lucho is like playing like one of the best players in MLS right now.
Yeah. I mean, and like you said, I mean, just talking about how we've cleaned some things up lately, I think we're currently on like a 7-game winning streak. Not even drawing, but like 7-game winning streak. So that's good in professional soccer. That is very hard thing to achieve. So, again, I think the vibes are good around there. Reds, Steve and I will be partaking in a Reds game this weekend with his bachelor party. So we're going to get nice and sauced for that one, and we'll check back in with you and whether or
You're
not
going
the
to
vibe
need
is good or bad.
Justin, I don't think you've watched the game this year, correct?
I watched like one game offhand. I have not paid attention. I have not given up on the Reds. I have just done better things with my time.
Incredibly fair. And you will need, I'm just telling you right now, Justin, you will need alcohol to watch this.
Yeah.
Game. So especially, well, I will say this, you've got Shohei Ohtani coming into town this weekend. So maybe just for the human interest story of seeing that man play baseball, that would be fun. But yeah.
We're going to need the two tall boys on entry, guaranteed. Before we even start the club stuff.
Give them to me right now. Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, Steve, we talked a bunch. We talked a lot. Got a lot of things covered on today's pod. I think we're probably set for a little while, but if there is more Bearcat stuff coming up, if baseball makes a little bit of a postseason run, we're going to be dropping something. And if not, you can catch us back here in a few weeks. We will have an off-season pod for you with some off-season topics that will be very interesting because the summer gets slow sometimes, but we still want to keep up with you. So make sure to stay tuned with us. If you're not already, follow us on X, on Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Follow us on Instagram, the TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to us. Wherever you're watching us right now, it's probably YouTube. Make sure to subscribe and stick with us for the rest of the season, off season, until we get back up to football in 100 days from now. So very excited for that. Steve, do you have any closing thoughts before we head out?
Just on the Bearcat Sports wrap-up front, we've got 13 track and field athletes that are heading to the NCAA East First Round at University of Kentucky this weekend, and we've already got 2 NCAA championship qualifiers. Shout out to Dominique Hall and Juliet Laraquente Hedner in the decathlon and heptathlon. So we like the tathlon. We like the athlons here at UC. So shout out to them, and shout out to all the athletes that are competing this weekend at Kentucky. Go Bearcats! Bring home some hardware.
Absolutely. And I think that is a fantastic way to close out. Again, follow us on those platforms if you're not already, and come back here next time, folks. Hopefully the Bearcats can get a dub and keep playing baseball. So, Viva
the Cats! Horns down.
Horns down. I to put the horns down.